Welcome to Marketing in Your Car, the podcast for funnel hackers everywhere. You are now part of a small group of underground entrepreneurs who are trying to change the world through the products and the services that we believe in. But because we don't rely on venture capitalists, we don't have financial safety nets. So we have to do things differently. We have to do things smarter. We do that through an art and a science that we call funnel hacking. Now, this podcast will give you a glimpse at the daily life of a funnel hacker. So let's get started. Hey everyone, this is Russell Brunson and welcome to Marketing Your Car. Now I got a couple cool things for you today. Number one, guess what today's episode is? This is episode number 300. Now I don't know about you, but it's kind of a big deal. That means I've been doing this show, well, for a long time. Enough that we have 300 episodes. It hasn't been a daily podcast, but it's been a couple times a week. So that means we're at probably 3 years, 3 or 4, anyway. So thank you for all of you guys who've been hanging out with me for so long. And hopefully you're still getting a ton of value from the show. And if you are, please tell other people about it. Now today, I got something really special. In fact, over the next 3 days, I got something really special for you. And this is the reason why. As many of you know, I'm writing the Expert Secrets book, and I was up till 4 o'clock last night trying to get it done. I've been locked in my room today trying to get it done. That's why I'm not in my car. I'm in my office, in my house, and I'm still not done. And I have to get it done because I have to have it to the editor by tomorrow if they're going to get it to the publisher by Friday, if I'm going to be able to launch on April 18th. So April 18th, launching the Expert Secrets book. I'm super proud of it. It's all about building a huge mass movement and how to get people to pay you for your advice. It's some of the coolest stuff. If you've been listening to podcasts for a long time, you've gotten little glimpses and little hints of it here and there. But it's something I'm so proud of. I cannot wait to get it out. But if I don't lock down and stop doing everything, then I'm not going to get done. So I'm going to stop podcasting for a couple days. I'm going to stop eating, drinking, sleeping, everything, so I can get this book done because it's so close. So with that said, I didn't want you guys to be bored while I'm gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something really, really cool. So last year, I joined Joe Polish and Dean Graciosi's $100,000 group, which means I paid $100,000 a year to hang out with like 15 people, and we share marketing ideas and cool stuff like that. And at the very first event, they asked me if I'd do a presentation, kind of showing some of the things that we have done to build such a good culture inside of ClickFunnels, how we went from 0 to 30,000 members, and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, okay, I'll do that presentation, but it's not going to be what you are assuming I'm going to talk about. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, I'm sure you're probably thinking I'm going to talk about like the funnels and this and that, but I'm like, there's a layer of complexity that I don't normally talk about that caused and created all that stuff. And I said that it's going to be in the Expert Secrets book. I'm going into that in a lot of detail, but I've never really talked about it before. I've hinted on it on the podcast, but I've never gone deeper than that anywhere else. And so I'll do that for you, Dean and Joe, because you guys are awesome. So I did. And I gave a presentation. It was a little over an hour long. And they were graceful enough to give me the recording and the rights to it. And so what I thought I would do, I thought it'd be kind of cool, is to share it with you guys. So this is literally like you guys paying $100,000 and being a fly on the wall during my presentation, where I'm going to be giving out stuff that I'm not going to be publicly releasing for at least 4 months. But because you are a faithful Marketing Your Car follower and listener, you guys are going to get that. So is that cool? Is it okay if I over-deliver? I hope. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my brother. He's taking that presentation and he's going to chop it into 3 segments. You get part 1 today, part 2 tomorrow, and part 3 the next day. So that'll be episode 300, 301, and 302. And then after that, I'll be back to my normal publishing schedule as long as I get this book done. Otherwise, you may never hear from me again until the book. Yeah, so that's the game plan. Anyway, with that said, I'm going to cut right there. And if you enjoy this at all, if you get some value out of it, please go and tell people you know to go to marketingyourcar.com, get the MP3 player, join the podcast, and listen in, because this stuff's important, and I think it is the future of marketing and sales as we know it. And I'm excited to be sharing with you guys through this channel. So with that said, I will cut to the event, and you guys can eavesdrop in and listen to what I had to say. All right, bye everybody.
How many of you have this thing called a website? Okay. Now, yeah, it's this thing called the internet that came out, a couple decades ago. So I look at anything online as real estate. Back in my direct mail days, when there was no internet, I always loved the line, the difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill is the message on the paper. Same paper, same ink, different message. And one changing of the message could make that same piece of paper worth 100 times more. Well, the same thing goes with any of the virtual space. It's what you say, how you say it, how you compel people. And someone that actually knows how to print virtual money would be Russell Brunson. And he has a whole process and a whole company and a whole software that can do this for you. And so he's going to take you through something that I'm sure could be potentially worth millions, if not tens of millions of dollars to all of you. So give it up for Mr. Russell Brunson.
Well, I'm excited to be here, excited to share some cool stuff. I didn't do my presentation until last night because I wanted to see what I think would be the most help for everyone. And so that's kind of what I came up with. So I made some handouts. You guys all have these? Okay, so what I want to do is, I'm not going to show you guys anything about ClickFunnels because that doesn't matter. I just want to help, I want to bridge some gaps, hopefully help you guys understand the psychology of funnels, because if you understand that, then everything else becomes easier. I think that's the most essential part for us as the entrepreneurs in the business to really understand. And hopefully this will kind of bridge some of the things from the copywriting and other things we've been talking about. Okay, so a couple things. And Craig yesterday was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was like, I was totally geeking out on loving it. I look at things very similar. I just flip it on the side kind of. And I want to kind of re-show this because it'll help my next thing I'm going to explain make more sense. So I look at the world where there's cold traffic, there's like warm traffic, and then there's hot traffic, right? So, and I got the picture there in my little handouts. If you ever read my book, .com Secrets, I sketch out everything I do because I'm a visual person. So this is the sketch. I learned this initially from Gene Schwartz. He talked about if you look at like any market, there's like this awareness, this cycle of awareness, right? Over here, people are unaware of what's happening. After they're unaware, eventually they become problem aware. From problem, they become solution aware. From solution, they become product aware. And then they're most aware. And so just kind of noticing like the people's companies here who are doing well but not where they want to be, it's almost the biggest thing I see everyone doing is that you've become masters at selling like here. This is like the warm market, right? And so you become really good at that. But to scale, you've got to step back. You've got to come back to here. This is like your existing audience who loves you. This is like Facebook, they love the market, but they don't understand you. And this is like the cold hard masses. And in my mind, the only way to grow past 10 million or so, I think most businesses can be really successful here. You have to master this to get to about 10, and beyond 10, you've got to become a master of this. This is like, how do you create your offer in a way that it goes to the masses, which is very similar to what Craig was talking about. And so that's kind of how I look at things. And it kind of leads me to the first important thing we'll talk about here, called the epiphany bridge. So, anybody in here ever done network marketing?
For very short periods of time.
And they'll admit they've done network marketing. Okay, so I'm gonna grab something real quick because it'll help illustrate this. So I have a buddy that started a network marketing company, and he wanted me to join it and to market it. I said no a million times. But eventually, he sent me some of the product. I loved it. It was really, really good. This is a company called Prove It. Anyone ever here heard of Prove It? No one here? Okay. If you've studied Dave Asprey's stuff about like high-fat diet, skinny your body, ketosis, this is the product they made. You drink it, put your body immediately in ketosis, tastes like candy, and it's awesome. So I helped them write a pitch and wrote this pitch for them. They took it out, and in the first 6 months, the company had $20 million this pitch. This year, they did over $100 million, and it's just growing like crazy because of the pitch. And I want to explain, after I wrote the pitch, they wanted me to come out to the leadership team and explain to these network marketers like how to use this asset I created for them, right? And so I love network marketers, but I'm also scared to death of them because they're like, they just pounce on, you know that feeling where you're just like, ugh, like I was getting pounced by everyone. And so I come in this room and I walk in the room, it's a room probably about 3 times as many people as this, and they want me to like show them how to use this new message to sell more stuff. And I'm looking at the audience and I'm trying to think like, what am I going to talk to about these guys? Like they don't understand funnels or marketing, they're a bunch of people who are selling stuff. And as I'm looking at this audience of these network marketers, and like prior to me coming in the room, I was watching them as they were like pouncing on hotel employees and other people. And I had this thing popped in my head, and I want to share this because it's like the key now to everything we do. So this is like a typical person, right? I'm gonna make fun of network marketers, but this is you, right, in your business. So like we were born, we went to school, things were going well, and all of a sudden something happened in our life that got you excited about what you're excited about, right? Dean probably initially sold a car and was like, holy crap, I can sell cars, made money, right? And then he sold a house. And then every one of you guys, like something happened. You were just normal humans, something happened, and all of a sudden you had an epiphany. where you're like, holy crap, real estate's the greatest thing in the world. Holy crap, financial stuff. Like something happened where you had this big epiphany, right? And it like changed your whole life, right? You guys all remember that moment when it happened for you. You had this epiphany and then you went over here and then all of a sudden, the worst thing possible happened. You started like, this is the coolest thing in the world and you start geeking out on it, right? So I'll draw this dude with glasses. So you start geeking out and you're like, oh, this is so cool. And you start studying and you just start doing the research and you start going deep. So I was looking at these network marketers and I was like, this product, I was watching these guys in the hallway and so like people walking by and they're pouncing on people and they're like, dude, you gotta quit burning glucose. That's why you're so fat. You gotta switch your fuel from glucose to ketones. If you do that, you won't be fat anymore. And it's like, man, if you have beta hydroxybutyrate salts in your drinks and in your coffee, then blah, blah, and all this stuff. And I'm watching this, right? And so what happens is we come into this world, we get excited, and we start geeking out, and the worst thing possible happens to us. We learn this thing we call technobabble. And every one of your businesses, you got a crap ton of technobabble, right? And it's these words that you use to describe things. Okay? And so what happens is you meet this prospect and they're so cool and you grab them and you're like, okay, this is my prospect. I got my shot at him. And you're about to like, I'm going to tell them everything I know and they're going to buy my crap and it's going to be amazing. And then they, blah, and you like spew out all this technobabble on the person, right? And watch these network marketers just spew the stuff out of people and they're freaking out and they run away, right? And for most of your businesses, like, how many of you guys know that you use technobabble? Like there's words for your industry that you use that you shouldn't probably be using, okay? And so the reason why, like what happens, this warm market understands your technobabble and they're excited to buy your crap over and over and over and over again, okay? But everybody else, they haven't geeked out yet. And so the key, this is what I found, like the key for me to sell anything is I have to stop this right here. I gotta cross out technobabble and I gotta stop this because this is what kills sales. And I gotta figure out what was it that gave me the experience that caused me to go on this journey. If I can figure out what gave me this epiphany, and if I can give somebody else that epiphany, I do not have to sell them anything ever. They'll have that epiphany in their mind, and they're gonna geek out, and then they will cause a revolution. They will go so crazy on it. But I gotta step back here. So when I was talking to this network marketing group, and the pitch I wrote, I was telling Craig this yesterday, I got equity for the company for writing a pitch. It took me less than an hour to write the entire thing. And the reason why the owner of the company wrote this pitch, he sent it to me, and it was like the worst thing ever. I was like dry heaving in my mouth, like, oh, that was like such a bad, it was all this, like thousands of like pounds of technobabble just like spewing forth, and like I couldn't even read the whole thing, and I was like, this is so bad. And he was a friend, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting in bed, I was like, I know he's gonna call me, want me to critique it and give him feedback, but it just sucks, the whole thing. So I just deleted the whole thing, and I was like, I'm just gonna rewrite this for him. And so the first thing I did is I was like, because I believed in this product, I believed in the concept, I was like, this is really, really cool. I was like, what was it that gave me the epiphany, that got me excited? Like, why do I drink this crap every day now? Like, what was it that gave me that epiphany? And I was thinking back, and it took me a while to realize, I was thinking like, when was it? Like, sometime in my life, something happened where I was like sold on that. And then I was going back here, and all of a sudden I remembered the moment that I had the epiphany. And I was at a seminar, and I went out to eat with my buddy, his name's Aaron Lilly. Do you guys ever remember in Sky Mall magazine, the cream that they would sell, you put on your mole and your mole would fall off? You've never seen that? So he's the inventor of that. So I'm out to dinner with the guy, super cool, doing insane amounts of money with that business. And we sit down to eat, and he's super ripped and healthy and everything, and I order like this amazing dinner, and he's ordering chicken with a side of butter. I thought it was weird. And then he's eating it, and he's like dipping his chicken in butter and eating it. And I was like, dude, you are a freak. Like, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, it's this whole thing. And all of a sudden, he started giving me technobabble. And so I started making fun of him more because it just like, gave me fuel for my teasing, right? So I'm making fun of him, and he's like, no. He's like, okay, let me explain it like this. He's like, your body, whoa. He's like, your body's kind of like a campfire, right? And he said, if you think about it, like you have a campfire, if you get kindling, right? And you throw a bunch of kindling on it, what happens? And I was like, it burns really fast and it goes away. He's like, hey, cool, that's like carbs. He's like, that's why you wake up in the morning, you eat Cheerios, and you get like, and then like 10 minutes later, you're starving. Your kids have ADD and they're bouncing off the walls because it's carbs. So you keep putting more carbs in, your body gets more hungry. He's like, that's how that world works. And I was like, okay, cool. He's like, proteins are kind of like getting a log, and you throw a log on the fire, and it'll burn a little bit longer, but the same thing, it burns up and then it eventually goes away. And he's like, fats are like coal. He's like throwing coal on it. It's harder to get the fats to catch on fire, but once they're on fire, like they burn warm and hard and dark. And he's like, that's the best energy source, because as soon as they're lit up, they'll burn all through the night. He said, that's like eating fat. He's like, if you can transition your body from eating carbs and proteins to processing fat, then then you've got this amazing thing where you lose weight, you feel more energy and everything. And I was like, oh, so that's why you're dipping your chicken in butter. Like it made sense to me, right? So when I wrote this pitch, I just wrote it's a 3-minute explainer video about a dude in a campfire. I tell my epiphany and why it's important to be in ketosis and how this product puts you in ketosis instantly. And that was the pitch, 3-minute video, took the company from 0 to $100 million in 18 months. But it's because I figured that out, because that speaks to everyone. I'm not dropping technobabble and all this other stuff. Does that make sense? So the biggest thing that I think I can share with all you guys is figuring out how to get out of this stage. Because this is where all you guys are stuck. I've heard you guys talking about your business and you're always throwing technobabble, assuming that any of us have any idea what you're talking about. And most of the times I have no idea what any of you guys are talking about. And it's like, because this is so second nature, this is your superpower, this is like what you're good at and you understand, this is where you lead from. If you get rid of that and figure out this piece, like this is the key. And I'm gonna share some other things because I have so much respect for what Craig does. Like, I don't think anyone's ever studied him. Like, it's probably creepy for him to know like how much I watch what he does, because like I have so much respect. And I look like what he does is like a sniper rifle, right? Like, he spends so much time crafting this message. It's just like, oh, flawless. And when he gets it right, like it's like a sniper rifle and blows up a company. I'm not nearly as skilled as him. And so like, what I've become a master at is this process of telling these stories, and I watch good copy like his, so I get good at like incorporating it into my speech patterns. I think I'm kind of like a blend between these two. Like, I'm kind of in the middle there where, and I'm doing a lot of stuff to be able to figure out messaging. I'll kind of show you guys that here in a minute. But this is the best copywriting, I think, is mastering this piece. Mastering the telling of stories, because, and the process I'm going to show you guys here is you can do a lot of them every single day. You're doing them, and you're finding the ones that work, and you're pushing away the ones that don't. And you can move through things really, really quick, okay? Any questions about the Epiphany Bridge? So one other thing, I had a big realization the other day as I was kind of going through this. How many of you guys have ever had something amazing happen to you, and you go to tell your friend, like, this cool thing happened, you tell them this whole story, and they're like, oh, and you're like, no, like, and you tell it to them again, and they're like, no, that sounds really cool, man. Like, you're like, no, dude, like, God, you had to be there. If you were there, you would have like felt what I felt. How many of you guys have ever done that before? Right? And so that's the biggest problem we have, is like a lot of times when we tell these stories, and this is why it's so important to become good at this, is we just, we suck at telling the story and then they don't have the epiphany. My job is not to tell them what epiphany they're supposed to have. My job is to set up an environment and a story that causes them to have this epiphany. Okay, when Marcus Lamona spoke at our last Funnel Hacking Live event, I had a 30-minute window before the event started where we had to sit down and just kind of talk, right? First time I'd ever met him. And he gets there and he walks in and he's got this really confused look on his face. He's like, I thought you guys were a website builder. I'm like, yeah, we are. He's like, why is everyone so crazy outside? Like, come to our events, it's more like a Tony Robbins event than anything. Like, people are going nuts and going crazy. And I was like, well, it's more than that. We're building a culture of people that love what we do, right? And so he's like, well, what's a funnel? And first thing I do, stupidly me, I start like trying to explain from here. And he's like, all right, so why is everyone so excited? I don't get it, why everyone's excited. You build websites. And I was like, And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I got to tell my story. So I came back and I told him the story that got me excited about funnels. And I explained that story to him and he was like, wait, so you're telling me that he's like, you're telling me that these can work for anyone, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, how would it work for Camping World? And I was like, well, this is what I would do. He's like, okay, well, how would this work for Sweet Pete's? I'm like, I would do this. How would this work for? And he started going through his businesses. And after 3 or 4 of me telling these stories, he stops and he goes, man, every business needs a funnel, right? It's like, yeah. He goes, I got to get you on the show. Okay? Because I didn't tell him, like, hey man, Marcus, every business needs a funnel, like, you should have me on the show. Like, I took him on a journey, told him a story, and then I put it up in the air, and I let him have the epiphany, right? Like, that's the key. Like, I want them to have the epiphany. I don't want to tell it to them. But you get them to that state by telling them about the epiphany you had. And so a couple things about the storytelling process that I've learned that works so good. How many of you guys have ever seen the movie, the X-Men movie, where they were like little kids before they became like the big X-Men? Do you guys remember that? I can't remember which one it was. But there's this scene when Magneto, before he was a little kid, and they're taking him to a Nazi concentration camp, and they start taking him in. He's like freaking out, and they see his defenses start kind of bending, and they're like, "There's something with this kid. Like, he's got some magic powers." So they pull him in this room, and this is a little tiny room. It's got Magneto sitting here. It's got like the Nazi, the head of the Nazi party there, and it's got Magneto's mom, and she's sitting there crying, standing there, and the Nazi guy's like telling him like to move this coin. There's a coin on the desk, and little Magneto's trying to move it, and he can't get the power to do it. He's like he's trying, nothing's moving. And then the Nazi guy gets kind of frustrated and looks over, pulls out a gun, shoots his mom in the head, boom, and the mom falls dead on the ground. And then you see there's a scene that's like so powerful. You see this little kid's face, and you see like the pain and the agony. You see his whole body like convulse down of like, my mom just died. And then it transforms from like this pain this pain to this like anger. And then he comes back up with like this just pure anger in his eyes and everything. You see him, and he like shoves the coin across. He starts crushing all the metal, crushing it, and like everything starts falling around him, and he just like destroys this whole room. And that's when he like found his power, right? Now, when watching film, you see that, right? No words were said, but you see all these things that are happening. You see the pain, you see the frustration, you see the anger, and us as an audience, like, as we're watching that, like, we feel it. How many of us, as I was just explaining it, you kind of felt some of that? Like, you felt that stuff, right? And so like that's the magic of film. Most of us aren't producing films to sell our stuff. And so we have to do that differently through our words. And so imagine if Magneto came and he's like, yeah, so when I was a kid, I was in a Nazi concentration camp. They wanted me to move a coin, and I couldn't do it, so they killed my mom. I was pissed, so I blew the whole thing up. You're like, all right. You wouldn't have had the experience, right? But if Magneto came and he starts talking about how he felt, okay, like when I'm telling my stories, like I go into like how I feel. I talk about like, man, like I was sitting there, I was so freaked out because like bills were due, and I had this stuff, and I had this like pain in my stomach, and I was like, it almost felt like a heart attack, but it was lower, and I felt this like pressure coming down, and I literally felt like someone was sitting on my back, like everything was coming down, and I looked down at my hands, and they were sweating, yet I was like freezing cold. My whole body was shaking and shivering because I was like in so much pain and frustration, so much fear. Okay, and so you notice as I'm telling that story, I'm walking us through what I'm feeling, and you start feeling that. Your audience starts feeling those things as well, right? Because my goal for me telling the story is I have to get you in the exact same state that I was in when I had the epiphany, or else you will not have that epiphany. Okay, if you look at a good author, I mean, you'll read books where an author will come into a room and they'll spend 30 pages explaining the room and the lights and the look and the feel and everything to set up a scene where they deliver some line because they need you to feel that line, but you won't feel it if they haven't set it up correctly. So if I want you to have this epiphany, I have to get you in the exact same state that I was in when I had it. Okay? Tony Robbins 101, state control. Like, I have to control their state, and I do that by telling the story in a way that gets you to feel what I felt, so that when I explain how I had my epiphany, you have the exact same epiphany. Does that make sense? Is that like the coolest thing? When I realized that, I was just like, this is like a whole nother level, and it's so easy when you start understanding, like, this is how the pieces work and how they all kind of flow together. Any questions about that at all? All right. So if you flip over to the next page, in my inner circle group, people always ask, okay, I got that, and like, what's the process now? So what I do a lot of times, I go through and I look at patterns. So I'll go through and dissect like 100 sales videos and like, what's the pattern? And then I like sketching out patterns based on that so I can replicate it over and over again. So I started going through all the stories I tell, and I was looking at like commonalities. Also, we had an event where we hired, maybe you guys know Michael Haig? Nobody. So Michael Haig, I write his name down, Michael Haig, H-A-U-G-E. There's an audio with him and I think Chris Vogler on iTunes. It's like a 6-hour storytelling workshop that they gave that's like the best thing in the world. But Michael Haig is like, he works in Hollywood, and he, again, we had him come to one of our events, and he was showing everybody, he's like, if you look at any movie that's ever been successful from the beginning of time, like Batman, Spider-Man, Titanic, anything, they all follow the exact same script. He's like, if you look at the screenplay that you get, he's like, on page number 3 is when the hero does this. On page 13, they always do this. On page 26, and like every movie across it's exactly the same. And so he came and talked. But if you listen to that class, it's a college class he's teaching on storytelling. It's insane. In fact, have you guys ever seen the movie Hitch? Yeah. So when Will Smith wrote that movie, it was before him and Michael Haig were like best friends. Will Smith said, I was studying Michael Haig's stuff, and I was writing Hitch 100% trying to follow the keys that Michael Haig taught. And then when it was done, he met Michael Haig, and they became best friends, like super good friends. Now, like Will Smith, all these guys, like Michael's the dude that they go to like help map out the screenplay, like super fascinating stuff. And so this became like, as I started looking at like the outline for like most of my stories, but also it's like the outline's very similar to what they teach in Hollywood. It's kind of interesting if you go into it. So if you look at like how I typically teach things, or how I tell my stories, they all start with a backstory. Big reason why is because it's this, right? Coming back to here, people see you over here as this guru on the mountain. If you start your presentation from there, they have no faith or trust or hope in you, right? Because it's like, well, that's the dean. He can get there, but I can't. So you got to come down the mountain, come back to where they're at and be like, hey, man, this is where you're at. I was here too. Like, come on, let's go on a journey. I'm going to take you where we're going. So you start with the backstory. The backstory usually leads you to some kind of wall, which typically is the same wall that your audience is in right now that's listening to you. And then the first thing you talk about is the external struggle, because this is what your audience is willing to admit. Like, yeah, like I needed more money, or yeah, I needed to get in shape. So you talk about like that's the first struggle. But then the second thing is you gotta get to the internal struggle, because this is the only thing that actually matters. This is what Dean was talking about yesterday of 7 whys. This is how I get to my internal struggle. It's the external, I need more money, and I ask 5 or 6 or 7 whys. Why? And that's the real reason why they care. So in your story, you don't talk about, you mention the external because that's where they're at, then you go into the internal. You talk about the internal thing that you were struggling with, because that's where it gets to them. That's where your controlling state, right? That's where you get into the same state you were in, because you're actually talking to them at a level that they don't ever share. And when you're willing and able to share that, then it causes the empathy you need. And from there, something happens. You have this epiphany. Whoa, check out how cool this thing was. But then after the epiphany, you're like, here's the plan, what I'm going to do. But after you have the plan, usually we still freak out, like, oh, is it going to work? What if it fails? So we have talk about paint the picture of failure, and then we got a call to action, and at the end of it, we have a result. And so this is kind of like an example. I have this on my desk when I'm doing videos, doing stuff. I just look at this all the time, so I make sure I don't miss pieces of it. Because I probably tell, I don't know, 40 or 50 stories a day. If you look at how much we're publishing stuff, I'm just telling stories all day long, and I want to make sure that I'm following a process. So this is there, and this little thing will help. These questions will help walk you through, like, what's your backstory and what did you want? There's a problem you encountered, how did you make it feel? What was the external struggle? What was the internal struggle? What was the epiphany you had? What plan did you come after the epiphany? What happened if you failed? And how to take action? What was the experience? So some Epiphany Bridge stories I tell are 1 minute to 2 minutes. Some of them are 30 to 40 minutes, but I tell a lot of them. Every one of my presentations, man, one of the presentations I did, one of the guys on my team was counting things, and in a 56-minute presentation, I told like 30-something stories. So I'm telling them a lot consistently over. If you guys ever watch my stuff, I can tell them story after story after story after story, because that's what gets people here. And if you notice, anytime I get to something where I come to some kind of technical thing, like when I did the pitch for this, I have to explain ketones, because there's a word called ketones. Ketones is technobabble, right? So as soon as I get the word ketone, I say ketone, and then I stop, and I say, the ketone's kind of like, and I step back, it's kind of like a million motivational speakers running through your body. I'm like, oh, cool. And then now they've got what ketones are, and I keep moving on. So anytime I introduce any kind of technobabble, I stop instantly, take a step back, I tell a real quick story to make it so that word means something to them, and then I can keep moving on. But anyway, I'm doing that over and over. So hopefully that helps. Does that help for like a tool for you guys? Is like how to, people ask like, how do you do your sales videos now? Like, it's really this. These are how most of everything we create is from that.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the behind-the-scenes look at our funnel hacking projects. You can also watch the Funnel Hacker online reality show and watch us build and launch funnels live at www.funnelhacker.tv. If you'd like to come hang out with your fellow funnel hackers, come join our Facebook group at www.projectclickfunnels.com. Oh yeah, and don't forget, you can get a free MP3 player with the first 257 episodes preloaded at marketinginyourcar.com. Join us next time, and remember, you're just one funnel away from your dreams.